Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is undefeated in the SEC. Wait, we're in the Big Ten. What's our record? Oh, no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio, episode 591, coming to you on Wednesday, March 5th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, including looking at new remarks from Chad Bowden, USC's general manager, which is a fun thing to say because we haven't said that a lot. Talk about that, talk about recruiting, the state of California, and so much more here on this episode. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy, email us, rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second What's Brewing Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia D'Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Alicia. It is March 5th. Happy Cinco de Marzo to everyone who celebrates.
Yeah, we're gonna go hard celebrating Cinco de Marzo. I already have a nap planned for after this episode.
It's Marzo.
Marzo.
Yeah, not Marcho.
Marcho. I like Marcho. Cinco de Marzo.
Marzo.
Okay.
Cinco de Marzo, which was, of course, a famous day. I think that's what today is. Also, Ash Wednesday. If you support the smudge, the forehead smudge.
That, you know what? It is fitting that that the Around the Horn has announced their final show day, which I want to say is in May. Mm-hmm. But it is fitting that we talk about that this week because it is Ash Wednesday, and I did always remember, coming home from school and watching Around the Horn and seeing Tony Reale with the smudge. Mm-hmm. So, just like mine, although I don't have it this year.
The interesting thing about the Ash Wednesday thing, what's up with the priests that don't get the cross right? You know, it shouldn't be a smudge. It should be
it's a cross.
It should be a cross, but it's always just like a weird, it's just a line sometimes, squiggle.
But you either get the priests who do like just the little squiggle, or the priests who like, to make sure that it's a cross, do like boo and then boo. There's no in between. There's no like sensible, just like actual cross.
Yeah. Anyways, before we get into the recruiting stuff, I think we have to start with a team that has risen. Of course, the USC women's basketball team, aka your Big Ten champions. Lindsey Gottlieb, Big Ten Coach of the Year. Juju Watkins named Big Ten Player of the Year and the Athletics National Player of the Year. I think that's pretty good, to be honest. They're up to number 2 in the AP poll. They will start the Big Ten tournament as the number 1 seed on Friday at 9 a.m., which is, Badger's really fired up because he thinks it's a little early too, and I agree.
The reward for getting the number 1 seed should not be playing at 9 Pacific on Friday to start the tournament. Not that I think they're going to have too much trouble with that game, but also it's a little bit, questionable. Thank you, by the way, for saying Big Ten champions and not to call out Kenny in the chat or anything like that, but Big Ten regular season champion. I have had to use that a few times for work, not specifically for Big Ten, but like all of these conference championships. And I have decided I hate it. If you win the season, you are the champion of the conference. The tournament, I need to start thinking of it, and I think we should all start thinking of it as like the Premier League. You win the Premier League, you're the Premier League champion. If you win the FA Cup, you won the FA Cup. You are Big Ten tournament champions, or you are Big Ten champions. That make sense?
I'm sorry, I'm very distracted by Jesse right now.
Well, yeah. Well, Badger is also distracted by Jesse. So
Jesse's decided to dig through her little dog bed, thinking that if she keeps digging, she'll get through to the other side.
Maybe she will.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but I think the problem is having two types of champions. It's annoying. Yeah. I think it makes more sense to make them different in basketball than they are in the Premier League, because like the Premier League and the FA Cup are two completely different competitions. But
the tournament,
but the regular season and the tournament
are two different competitions.
But they're related. They are related competitions. The FA Cup and the Premier League have nothing to do with each other.
Well, they're both put on by the English FA, though. They're both governed by the same organization.
Yes, but the Big Ten tournament is seeded based on your position in the Big Ten.
All right, then let's call it the League Cup. Let's compare it to the League Cup.
Sure. The point is, I agree. I think that the tournament champions should be called the tournament champions, but the regular season champions should be the champions. I do feel bad for the mid-major regular season champs, who, like, if you're in a little conference,
they don't get an automatic bid, right?
Yeah, if you're in a little conference that doesn't get that only gets one team in, how much does it suck if you dominate the regular season and then lose in the conference tournament, and then now you don't get to go to March Madness, like the big dance? Like, that sucks, right?
It does suck, and honestly, like, they're not going to give away this many bids, but like,
yeah. Luckily for SC could lose on Friday and still probably have a number one seed, and we'll see how the Trojans do in the Big Ten tournament, and then continue on. We'll learn about seeding next week, because the women's tournament is a week before the men's. The men's probably not going to win it, but you know
I would wager. I would wager that it is extremely unlikely that the USC men's basketball team will win much of anything.
It's a rebuilding.
No shade to them. It's a rebuilding year. We'll always have the Michigan State win. That's
sure.
That's what I'll say. So
Spartans famously a very overrated militant society.
I wouldn't say overrated, but definitely a militant society.
Sure, but a little overrated by the historians, and definitely the Roman bros. Even though I know that the Spartans weren't Roman, but you know what I mean. They
most certainly were not Roman.
I know that. I'm saying the people that are
the Roman Empire people.
Yeah, the Roman Empire. Yeah. You know, people who
here's what I'll say.
Stop thinking about the Roman Empire. Shout out to Jake.
Here's what I'll say for the Spartans. Even though their society was not just militaristic, but like almost like bordering on like eugenicist. Women were probably better off in Sparta than they were in the vast majority of places in the ancient world. So I'll give them that.
There you go. They got something going for them.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to some other news. All right, let's talk about SC has a new hire. SC has hired Joe D'Orazio as the assistant running backs coach and the director of football strategy. He was previously an analyst with Baylor. Alicia, your thoughts?
Yeah, he was like an assistant to Andy Reid in the NFL for a while. It seems like a solid hire. I like that USC continues to bolster the coaching staff, in that now that there are no restrictions, they're adding these assistant coaches to much more like an NFL. You know, in an NFL structure, you have your running backs coach and then you have an assistant running backs coach, and USC is very much, I think, building off of that model. He's also the director of football strategy, which hell if I know what that is. But a lot of people are assuming that this, and I bring this up because Walter Clark in the chat says USC got their clock manager with the hiring of Diorizio. Diorazio, thank you. And I mean, I would hope so. I think director of football strategy might lead us to that like conclusion, maybe. I also have heard that it's more like a football strategy is in like analytics and that kind of stuff, which very needed from a USC perspective. I love the analytics side of things. If it's something like, I think in a perfect world, what this would be is he's an analytics guy who puts together the plan in terms of situational analytics, so that Riley and the rest of the coaching staff has a go-to for what the numbers say in particular situations. Will he be doing the full shebang game manager, like clock manager role that we would like to see hired? That I'll wait to be seen. I would love if that's the case, but I still am slightly skeptical that is actually what he's going to do. That doesn't mean he's still, this position is still a great position to hire somebody for, and it's still a really positive hire. So, don't take that as me like dogging the hire or anything like that. It just, I don't know that we're getting the position of our dreams necessarily, but I'd love it if that's the case.
Yeah, the strategy is a very vague term of what that means, right? Like recruiting strategy is another title that SC has out there. That what does that mean? Does that mean who do you recruit or how do you recruit them? I don't know, right? Like it's a little open-ended there. You look at Diorazio's bio, interesting. He is an Ivy League guy, graduated from the Wharton School of Business at Penn, with a Bachelor of Science in Economics. There you go. But his coaching history is so interesting. Tight ends coach at University of Chicago, go Maroons. Then grad assistant at Utah under Kyle Whittingham, right? He goes from there to a 2-year stint with the Chiefs under Andy Reid as the special assistant to the head coach. Then was the tight ends coach at Columbia. Spent 2 years as the quality control assistant wide receivers coach with the Eagles. And then from 2018 to 2023, he was with Columbia as the running backs coach and then the offensive coordinator. So very much Ivy League guy. And then was the quality control guy at Baylor last year. So sort of all over the place. Either way, I think that you talked about analytics. I think that sort of checks out here. Not to reduce everything to Ivy League, smart guy, analytics, numbers, but Ivy League, smart guy, analytics, numbers.
Yes. Oh, and I do want to say I looked into a little bit more of because we talked about the Rams assistant who was doing their like clock management, and I think they called him a game management assistant. John Streicher. He's now taken a job with the Patriots as a vice president of football operations and strategy. So I don't know if that again leads to like strategy being all linked to game management, analytics, all of these kind of things being connected. I think it does, but we'll see.
We'll see how it goes. Other news to get to, and what I think we want to talk about with the thumbnail, the title, all that stuff of the episode, is recruiting. California has been a priority for fans, certainly. And now one of the biggest priorities of the football program. Absolutely. I mean, Lincoln Riley and SC has always talked about the importance of California, surely. But I think when have seen the numbers lately, and even going back into the Clay Helton era at the end of it, not a lot of success in locking down guys in the state of California. Well, Chad Bowden talked to a bunch of media. He had media availability earlier this week. and talking about various things, including recruiting California, I think sort of leaves fans with like a massive boner for USC football and how it's being put together. Alicia, before we get into like all the specific talking points, what's your overall look of how Chad Bowden put everything together?
You know how we always talk about like coaches winning the press conference?
Yeah.
I think that Chad Bowden, if he was a head coach, this would be like winning the press conference at a like 150% level. I think he hit on basically everything that USC fans have had concerns about or opinions about on the recruiting side of things, on the transfer portal side of things, on the NIL side of things. All of those things, it feels like he had the perfect answer for. And I think obviously the problem here is squaring away like some of the things he said with what will actually happen. There are some things which, at the very bottom of this discussion, there are some things here, quotes that I think are amazing quotes, but I still have slight skepticism that's actually, that this is actually going to be the way that things operate because, people working together is complicated and what you want to do isn't always what you're able to do. So, winning the press conference only goes so far. But as far as Chad Bowden, in terms of what we know he was able to accomplish at Notre Dame, the actions that USC has taken on the recruiting trail already, as far as hiring goes, we just talked about Durazio and that. Like, he's like the 10th hire that USC's made in the last month. USC has expanded things greatly. And so right now they're talking the talk. I am happy for them to talk the talk. I think that there's so much to be excited and positive here about. But I've also been burned one too many times. So, I'm very hopeful about where USC is headed. I am also trying to stay realistic and trying to sort of keep my head on my shoulders and not get my head too far up in the clouds and
Sure.
Look at this whole thing from the perspective that like USC has done again. USC hiring Lincoln Riley was absolutely the correct move.
Mm-hmm.
But through 3 seasons, it hasn't yielded what it was supposed to.
Yeah.
USC continues, certainly over the last few years, certainly with Jen Cohen in charge, USC continues to make all the right moves. Making all the right moves does not guarantee that you will find the success that you want.
Mm-hmm.
However, making all the right moves certainly puts you in much better position to reach the goals that you have right now and also set your program up so that if you have to make the next hire, they come in on a platform that is much more stable, strong, and buildable on top of than what Lincoln Riley inherited, for instance.
Yeah, Rowan Murray in the chat says these additional hires should make us feel better. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I think that this goes back to what we've said in the pod for like a decade now. You judge a hire in 2 phases. You judge the hire and the tenure, right? They're 2 different things. And one is a decision point, and one is, how things worked out, right? SC has had a very good track record of late in making the correct decisions, but it's still got to pan out. And sometimes the correct decisions don't pan out. Sometimes the bad decisions do pan out. And I think that there needs to be some, objectivity in being able to decipher what is what. Just because a bad decision pans out doesn't mean that was the right decision. Doesn't necessarily mean it was completely the wrong decision. There's nuance to all of these things, right? And when you talk about winning a press conference, I think there also needs to be some objectivity looking at it too of like, does winning the press conference mean just giving lip service, fan service? Because it could. It could. But I think that there's a lot to buy in here because of the depth at which, all these statements from Chad Bowden and Lincoln Riley of late have been, the things that they've touched on. Plus, I think you look at the track record of not only Bowden, but all the guys that and ladies that he's brought into the football program of late, right? Like Notre Dame is a very well-run football program.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can all agree on that. They just went to the national championship game, right? And SC went in to their arch rival and gutted them in a lot of different ways. Chad Bowden was asked about, why leaving Notre Dame for SC made the most sense. And he said, I knew coming to SC it was going to be an hour. In an hour time span, I spoke to Jen Cohen and Lincoln Riley and voiced my aspirations and what I believe college football is going to be in the new era and how aggressive I'd like to be in that new era. I like how they're talking about college football like it's Survivor.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
New era of Survivor.
They were spot on and shared a lot of the same thoughts that I did, which is a huge reason why I chose to leave a great situation, how I felt this was better. There are more resources to win here. Something that, of course, I'm sure your Notre Dame alum group chat was, up in arms over. But, this goes back to Lincoln Riley talking about how the Coliseum is the Mecca, right? It's one of those things where if everything is going right, the Coliseum absolutely can be a Mecca of college football. A Mecca. Maybe not the, but a Mecca, right? When you're going 6-6 in the regular season, it's not. But the pieces are potentially there. When you get everything moving in the right direction, I think SC's ceiling is higher than Notre Dame's.
Mm-hmm.
But SC isn't as high as Notre Dame right now. And it's a matter of getting there.
Yeah, and that's the challenge is, I think that I think many a person has looked at USC. Obviously, Lincoln Riley looked at USC and seen this sleeping giant that they could, go hog wild with. But it is also it has been a bigger challenge than I think any of them realized, because I don't know how many people realized, even during the Pete Carroll era, how dysfunctional USC's athletic department was.
Yeah.
And I think Pete Carroll's success masked a lot of dysfunction in the athletic department that continued to undermine USC's ability to try to succeed after Pete Carroll departed. And with every successive coach that came and left, that dysfunction became much more difficult to handle, leading up to, the Clay Helton hire was just a scramble for stability. Yeah. And Clay Helton did give USC stability. USC doesn't want to live in a world where they're in that kind of stability. USC is not Iowa, just sort of happy with that.
Are you saying this isn't heaven?
But I remember, during the Clay Helton era, in the middle of the Clay Helton era, we talked about, when USC chose not to fire him in 2018 or in 2019, we talked about how there was a reason for that, and that one of the things that we saw USC doing slowly but surely was starting to piece together the infrastructure that would be necessary to hire the next guy. And that is ultimately what happened. USC pieced together the infrastructure that convinced Lincoln Riley that it would be worth leaving Oklahoma to come to USC. But that was still just scaffolding in the end. Mm-hmm. And what Jen Cohen has done and come in, I think, just done a really good job of continuing to build that up. What USC needs now is somebody to, get this building to the grand opening. To continue that metaphor. And it feels like Bowden is a really good, I'm pretty happy that this stage of the plan is in Bowden's hands.
Yeah. Especially
because so much of what he talks about is about being aggressive. And I think that one thing that we heard from him about him coming out of Notre Dame was he's a crazy person. And I think it is underestimated how important having a crazy person running your program is.
A good crazy?
There are levels of crazy. Yes. Pete Carroll, crazy person,
Yeah.
madman,
Don't ask him about
workaholic,
9/11,
insane.
yeah.
It won't. I mean, even aside from that, like Pete Carroll getting mad because the NCAA was putting rules in place to stop, coaches recruiting because Pete Carroll was recruiting too hard.
Yeah.
Like that level of craziness. Like I think there's a touch of madness to Nick Saban and what he been able to accomplish, in terms of all of what he was able to do. Like the best coaches, the best programs are run by those people who are kind of too much. Like, you can't be low key and chill and successful, which was Clay Helton's problem, by the way.
Yeah.
So, I love that so much of what he's talking about here is simply just like running at full speed all the time. So that's got me excited.
Yeah. And, you put everything together and you see the roadmap that SC is trying to put together. Bowden talked about, I think this is a place that's a lot closer than people think. I knew that coming here. I think this place is close, which, if we're talking about a press conference that's going to be delivering a lot of fan service and winning the press conference, maybe literally quoting Lincoln Riley from this past season.
Well, and Clay Helton. I mean, Clay Helton was saying this crap too.
Yeah,
So.
but this is the frustrating part is like, they're not wrong. Like SC had a lead in 11 of 12 regular season games and the first 11 games and still went 6-6. So it's not like they weren't close, but that was the problem too. But we've discussed that a million times over.
Yeah.
But let's get back into the whole purpose of all of this is just talking about the reprioritizing of the state of California, Southern California in particular. Recruiting focus, it's going to be local. Quote, we're going to do everything through the city. We're going to do everything through the state. That's going to be our primary focus, says Bowden. And, you look back at SC's rosters in those national title teams under Pete Carroll, and I think we talked about it before. Like, it had the perfect balance of a bunch of kids from Mater Dei and Olu and Long Beach Poly and all those places, Servites, but you also had the big additions from out of state, Ray Maluga from Hawaii, Dwayne Jarrett from New Jersey, Keith Rivers from Florida. But those are sort of the bricks, and you also need the mortar from the state of California, and SoCal in particular, to use a Gerard Martinez analogy. But at least when you're looking at California being reprioritized, this is something we've talked about for a while now. How good is it to hear it sort of bluntly and put explicitly that way?
I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot, that my argument for hitting California hard is and has always been that USC is blessed to exist in fertile recruiting grounds, because there are a lot of schools out there, like let's talk about Oregon. Yeah. Can't just sit there and say, we're just going to lock down our state and then, pick and choose who we want from out of state and go from there. Most schools don't have this. Most schools aren't, Florida or Texas or Georgia or California. And that is an advantage that USC has had, that USC has ceded away to schools like Alabama and Texas A&M and Oregon and Ohio State, who have come in.
SC's not in Manhattan, Kansas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But my argument for shutting down the local kids has always been that you are more likely to hang on to your quality players in an era of immense recruiting competition. You are more likely to hang on to the elite players in California than you are getting a commitment from a guy in Georgia, but then having to cross your fingers and pray that he signs the paperwork on the last day, because he has things that there's an element that is outside of your control.
Yeah.
That you cannot, change. Like, you can do a lot of things to convince players about, coaches or playing time or anything like that. But if their deal breaker, to take a stance from College Football 25, like, if their deal breaker is proximity to home and somebody else has a higher proximity to home pipeline,
Yeah.
you're at a disadvantage there.
Sure.
So for me,
you got to be so much better at everything else.
yes,
Right?
yes. So to me, it was always about you're just playing the odds. Playing the odds. Your odds are simply higher keeping these guys home than trying to swing for the fences outside of the state and sort of living and dying by that, which USC kind of has done. So to me, this restatement of prioritizing California, I like it because to me, this just means that it will be easier to, to hold on to these classes. One of the big things right now is that USC's class of 2026 is currently the number one class in the country. They have 11 commits, and the majority of them are from California. Now, the big difference people have talked about, this time last year, USC had a very highly rated class, and it just sort of fell apart by the end. And what is the difference between then and now? We've talked about, the difference is that a lot of these guys are from California. It's easier to keep the guy from Rancho Cucamonga and Rancho Santa Margarita and Loyola and all of these to hold on to them the whole way through. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed to hold on to them the whole way through. Yeah. Because a lot of this also does come down to NIL, which Bowden also talked about. But in the end, I think that USC has not taken advantage of the fruits of California in recruiting enough recently. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but attention is one of them. Attention to high school coaches, attention to program directors and 7-on-7 teams and all of this kind of stuff, which is the one thing, the big thing we're hearing across the board about Bowden, about Chad Savage, about a lot of these guys is, we're building relationship in California.
That was Sark's favorite word.
I mean, yeah. So that's, I think that's to me, that's the biggest thing. It almost has less to do with the players themselves and a lot more to do with, I think this is signaling to the coaches, to the athletic directors, to the program directors of those sort of club teams that USC is paying attention to them again and wants them and wants to value them.
Yeah. I think it also helps that Chad Bowden, coming from Notre Dame, we've talked a million times over that Notre Dame prioritizes California. There's a reason that SC has stayed with their rivalry with Notre Dame because Notre Dame wanted to keep that one.
Yeah.
They could lose the one with Michigan, even though SC and Michigan were like equal rivals as far as Notre Dame was concerned. They were okay with cutting out the Michigan one because they needed to come to LA every other year. And they kept the Stanford one over Michigan State and Purdue and Georgia Tech and Boston College and all those other rivals that Notre Dame has, even though they don't have the historical rivalry in the same sense with Stanford as they do with the other schools I just mentioned. Again, where is Stanford? In California. Of course, the lesser part of California, but it's still California. It still allowed Notre Dame to finish their regular season every single year and spend Thanksgiving in California, which allowed them to recruit the state during the playoffs, right? Like, Notre Dame knows that more than anything else. Chad Bowden comes over to SC having that knowledge, having that mindset, and I think it helps. And then you look at what California is next season, or next year in the recruiting class, 2026 recruiting class. Bowden said he thinks it's the best class in California in 2 decades. We've talked a lot about how a lot of times SC is limited in the state of California for recruiting trench guys. There are a lot of offensive linemen in California, maybe not as much as you wish that there were. Defensive linemen is always difficult in California. We tend to produce a bunch of skill guys. A bunch of quarterbacks always come from California, but maybe not those SEC-type defensive tackles, right? Mike Patterson, he was a Philly guy, right? Sean Cody was from Los Altos, but Leonard Williams from Florida, right? Like, you look at the guys that SC has had, and there's a lot of out-of-state dudes on the defensive line, but so you're limited by the local talent. But when the local talent is the number one class in the country next year, I think it further emphasizes the importance to prioritize that, right? Because if you don't prioritize California, then you're also not prioritizing elite talent, which has always been my big argument, right? Like I've said, it's great to have California recruits, but more than anything, you just get good players, just get good guys. If there's more good guys in California than anywhere else, then that only underscores the priority that California and the elite guys can be, gotten in one fell swoop.
Yeah, 100%. But also, I think that we're selling California short if we're saying that USC can't get the necessary line talent in California when Alabama and Texas A&M and Georgia and Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame are coming to California to get offensive linemen and defensive linemen.
Yeah, the offensive linemen have always been here in particular.
Yeah, Oregon gets their defensive linemen from California. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's like I think one of the things that maybe Lincoln Riley and his staff needed to learn is that, like, I think maybe they came into the thing saying, well, we can't possibly get what we need from California in the trenches. We have to go to Georgia and Texas. Yeah. Not realizing that, like, they were letting other schools come in and take, 4-star, 5-star line talent out of California. Mm-hmm. Why has USC not kept these big bodies home? That's, I think, one of the biggest failures that USC has had even before Lincoln Riley, about too many big guys leave the state. I mean, a couple of years ago, Aiden Breland, last year, the kid from Carmel, Texas got another modern day guy. Like they're there. Yeah. They're there. So I think that my hope would be that Bowden recognizes that from sort of that outside perspective. But he's also not wrong about this assessment that the 26 class is loaded in California. Antonio Morales started me on this little dive, but it's 19 of the top 150 prospects in the composite this coming cycle are in California. That's compared to 12 last year, and USC signed only 2 of those. And the rest of those ended up Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Washington, the likes of those. There were 13 in 2024. There were 10 in 2023. There were 8 in 2022. There were 13 in 2021. The last time there was a comparable class in terms of the elite prospects from a composite perspective was in 2020 when there were 18, and 2019 when there were 21 in the top 150. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of guys that USC can go out and get from in their backyard who rank very highly in these assessments. And what it takes to get those guys is, number one, being the force in California. Mm-hmm. And number two, the thing that Rama Murdy asked in the chat, the real question with all these hires is, can we stop Oregon from taking away all the top players? NIL will have to increase to compete. Yeah. Well, Bowden addressed that.
Yeah, he says, quote, we're going to be as aggressive as anyone. We might even be the most aggressive. There's a fun quote. With the most aggressive, our aspirations for what we're going to do in NIL are as high as anyone in the country, and I hope people know it. Which sort of leads me, not to go on a slight tangent here, but I think that this is going to be a great idea for a future episode. Rome Murdy also in the chat said that recruits didn't want to play for Helton before, and the program wasn't elite enough in the past. And I think that these little things, these are all decision points, right? How good is the program now? What is the NIL situation? What is the priority? And when you and I, we play, College Football 25. Zachary in the chat, I know, plays College Football 25. You look at what goes on there and how the recruiting goes. All those little things have grades. We should go through and assign SC grades for all those things realistically in real life. Because, yes, facilities, I think that people simplify recruiting too much. It's like, oh, it's just NIL, or oh, it's just whether you're winning now, or it's just this, or just, it's all of those things. Did you win 20 years ago? Did you win last year? Those things both matter to different degrees and to different players. And to some guys, especially now, in the recruiting class of 2026 next year, NIL probably matters a lot more than whether or not you won when they were a child, right? And especially when you look at schools like Oregon, who have prioritized NIL and really been able to get sort of the A+ grade there. Where is SC? I think SC needs at least an A to be able to compete with everything else, because yes, there's grades that SC is going to have that's going to be A+, but you ideally want to maximize your A's all over the board.
Yeah, and NIL is one area that you, as USC, have control over.
Yeah.
There are some areas where you don't have any control over them. Mm-hmm. And this is, the NIL question is one of them. And I think a huge part of the reason that USC has lost, certainly in the last couple of years, lost the big battles for players in California is because USC, seemingly as a policy, was not willing to go all out on NIL for high school players. And that's another thing that Bowden talked about, is that the structure of the philosophy for USC going forward in recruiting is that high school recruiting will be the priority, and that they will look to sort of supplement the roster through the transfer portal, which to me is a change from what Lincoln Riley's staff was trying to do initially. I think partly by necessity, because they came in and sort of had to rearrange the roster so much and transfers became such a big deal. But, more than anything, USC is looking at it and saying, hey, we're not going to lose these local recruiting battles anymore. Now, they have to follow through on that, obviously. I think that's easier said than done.
You got to follow through with all these things.
But I think it's also easier to buy in to this particular line of thinking when, last year USC gets Jakeem Stewart. USC doesn't get Jakeem Stewart if they don't offer a lucrative NIL deal, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
This year, USC, even since Bowden came in, USC gets the commitment from Simote Karanga. That's a guy that I don't know USC locks down this early in the process without being aggressive and saying we will, we'll match whatever NIL deals are out there for you from other programs. Those are the kinds of players that if USC is aggressive with their NIL, we'll see them get. Now, they're not going to win every battle, certainly, but I suspect you will see USC winning more of these battles, or the battles in California will more often come down not to NIL, but to some other factor.
Yeah, but if NIL is what gets you in the conversation to then put your other factors at work, I think that's key, right?
Yeah.
Like, going back to the video game, guys have a deal breaker, right? And if the deal breaker is NIL, then okay, so you cement the NIL thing, and then you go from there.
Yeah.
You gotta start someplace. By the way, all these quotes. Check out Antonio Morales of The Athletic and Chris Trevino and Connor Morissette of USCFootball.com. So much more stuff. All those guys are putting together great content over there. Go read their stuff. That's where all these quotes are coming from. I think the other thing that I think is fascinating is sort of the clarity on how everything is sort of working. We talked about this before. Like we saw that the titles of the new hires, what they were going to be, assistant, to this and a director of that and all that kind of stuff. Well, we got some clarity on the front office structure. D. Brown, who was formerly the director of player personnel at Illinois, he's going to be the assistant general manager and the right-hand man for overseeing the recruiting staff. That recruiting staff has Max Steneker, who was, of course, the GM at Wisconsin. He's the executive director of player personnel.
So these are the umbrellas are everybody underneath, like Max Steneker reports to Dre Brown. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if then the rest of the staff reports to Max Steinecker, but it's sort of this is the like pecking order almost of
a little bit of an org chart.
Yeah, it's Dre Brown, Max Steinecker, and then the recruiting staff.
Yeah, Aaron Amama, Coach Dog, personnel assistant.
My brain doesn't connect there.
Yeah. Addie Goodson, Logan Sneed, Skylar Fan, Weston Zernicle, and Drew Fox, sort of all under Steinecker and Dre Brown. Then you have Zaire Turner, who was the director of player personnel at Notre Dame, who had sort of taken over for Dre Brown's role the year before. Dre Brown went from Notre Dame to Illinois. Zaire Turner is going to be the assistant athletic director of recruiting ops, sort of under her own umbrella. She's going to handle admissions, getting players on campus, transcripts, and budget. Quote, there are some things from a budget standpoint that we want to enhance. Enhance, big word for Chad Bowden. You read the quotes, you want to make a drinking game out of everything? Enhance and compete in the state of California, I think would be your prompts there. But yeah, I think it's interesting how there's going to be all these sort of Dre Brown reports to Chad Bowden. Zaire Turner reports to Chad Bowden. Who does Chad Bowden report to? Drum roll, please. The big question everybody has always had. It's both Lincoln Riley and Jen Cohen. Quote, there's no power struggle, the power distribution, the whole thing. We're in this together. I've always viewed it that way. You can't do anything by yourself. You can't. We're all in this together. That's how we're going to win championships, is doing everything together. We're not going to be just one person as to why this place wins a championship. Alicia, I have thoughts and concerns here. Sounds wonderful.
Again, that's what I was getting at earlier, and the next two quotes that we're going to discuss are what I was referring to. This one, I think in a perfect world, this is wonderful. If the relationship between Lincoln Riley, Jen Cohen, and Chad Bowden can stay positive, can stay collaborative, can stay respectful, and everybody is on board with this, and there's no egos. If everybody can put their ego aside, then this is perfect. Yeah. And this will work beautifully. But there's one thing I know in these sort of high-powered situations, you do not get where Jen Cohen, Lincoln Riley, and Chad Bowden are without having an ego and without doing things a certain way and having things done the way that you want them to be done. So I think that Bowden can have what he hopes will be the collaborative experience between these three. But he has also only been part of this partnership for a month. Right. And he can't possibly know that there will be no power struggle. So yeah, I'm not saying he's wrong to say it. I'm just saying, like, if this all breaks down, then it will be this that is the issue. Now, having said that, and I'll let you say your piece, this triumvirate also lends itself very easily to, and I know that West Texas Mike said JK after saying it. Sounds like Lincoln's getting pushed out, but I'm not saying Lincoln Riley's getting pushed out, but the way it is structured at the moment, if there is a lack of unity and cohesiveness here, there is one very obvious person to jettison and then replace to find somebody who can be more harmonious with Jen Cohen and Chad Bowden. So to me, there is a lot of pressure on Lincoln Riley to play ball here, because I think if he doesn't play ball, he's not going to be long for this.
I think it's interesting, because I think that in the grand scheme of things, in terms of importance on how USC wins, Lincoln Riley is more important. And then it's probably Jen Cohen, and then it's probably Chad Bowden and then Jen Cohen, just because she has the least amount of input on the day-to-day of all those three. But in terms of overall hierarchy, Jen Cohen can fire both of the two. Can Lincoln Riley fire Chad Bowden?
Bowden? I highly doubt it.
It would have to be something that he would. It's like the Seinfeld thing of turn your key. You got to do the nuclear bomb 2 key thing to take out Chad Bowden. But like to your point, if anyone is in a precarious position, I do think that it's probably Lincoln Riley, because my burning question is what happens in the future if Lincoln Riley's hit by a bus, or Lincoln Riley has a disappointing season this year. No matter what the situation is, for whatever reason, there needs to be a coaching change. Who's making the call? Is it? I'm guessing Jen Cohen writes the check to make the call that way, obviously. But is Chad Bowden making the hire? Is Jen Cohen making the hire? Are they doing it together? Are they hiring someone who will then oversee Chad Bowden? Are they would the next iteration of SC football look like Cohen, Bowden, head coach? I that's how I think it would make sense, right?
I think absolutely that is the most likely outcome here. In terms of
if
the
they truly want to do the
NFL
the
structure,
thing. Yeah,
we're just seeing so much of the NFL structure come into play that I think that a new hire will say they're collaborative and on the same level as the GM, but in reality, the GM hires the coach, and Jen Cohen is the equivalent of the owner, but Bowden is the GM, and the coach from an NFL perspective is. Again, they should all be working in concert. This is like a triumvirate, but there are levels to it, I think, pretty clearly.
I guess this is what I'm asking for is, who is the head of football ops? You know what I mean? This is a baseball thing, and is transferred to other sports where, the GM of the Cubs, it was not Theo Epstein. Theo Epstein, never the general manager of the Cubs. Jed Hoyer, the general manager of the Cubs then and now. And it was Theo Epstein who was the director of baseball ops. He hires the general manager, even though he is the acting general manager, even though he doesn't have the title, right? Like,
can I give you my answer to this?
Sure.
I think Chad Bowden is the director of ops, or VP of whatever. These guys always are.
Yeah. In other words, the person that the coach reports to.
Yeah,
right?
and Dre Brown is the GM.
In that instance, sure.
In the sense of
in that way of looking at it. Sure.
In the sense of Dre Brown is clearly taking control of recruiting.
Sure.
And Chad Bowden is an umbrella that oversees recruiting and football. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the comparison there to the baseball structure that you're referring to.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense. When asked if there would be a disagreement, Chad Bowden said, through confrontation, that's the only way in my mind to achieve anything. You can't just sit in a corner and say, oh man, I like this guy. Everyone needs to be heard. We need to come together to make a decision. We've already had conversations like that, which I think have been really good. But there's a lot more togetherness when it comes to evaluation. I think that's the only way to attack it when there are differences of opinion.
This is specifically referring to the coaches and recruiting staff evaluating players and which directions they're going to go.
I know we make a ton of analogies here. I think there's a lot of Pink Floyd in here, and it worries me.
Well, okay, again, this is the second thing.
In a perfect scenario, they are making Dark Side of the Moon or Wish You Were Here. Everyone's vocal, everyone's heard, everyone's included, everyone, maybe not equal, but everyone has their voice is heard in a way that provides some equity to the opinion. So that way you're maximizing the joint brain power to make the proper decision. You're talking it out. You're being objective, all those things. But then you get to Animals, and Animals, great album, my favorite Pink Floyd album. But that rat bastard Roger Waters starts putting his little bullshit fingers in it. Then you get to the wall and it's all him. And he's no longer listening to anybody else. And Rick Wright kicked out of the band. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
confrontation is great when there's no ego that is going to stop someone from allowing you not to win the confrontation.
When you can have confrontation that is between people who have enough mutual respect that no one gets their feelings hurt.
Yeah.
And I think that this is, again, where I love this. Like, I think this is a perfect answer for how do you deal with, disagreement and how do you come to these decisions. I think it's a perfect answer. That is the way that a recruiting staff and a coaching staff, like you can't just sit there and say, I like this guy. Like, you need to fight for the guys that you want. You need to go hard for the guys that you want. I think that's huge. My concern here being is that, again, this relies on there being harmony within a group, because if there isn't harmony, if there isn't everybody, rowing in the same direction, then these are the relationships that can fall apart, that can then lead to situations where, like, this is honestly, like, I know you guys don't want us to talk about soccer, but it's soccer has nothing to do with it, really. It's Liverpool had a system where they had the head coach, the manager, and they also had like a director of like a football that was sort of the scouting department or whatever. And there started to be this divide between players that were signed because the manager identified them and wanted them and they were brought in, and players that were identified and brought in because the scouting department thought they were good. And they all come in, and it's the manager's job to incorporate all of these guys into the team, but you can tell a difference between the way he incorporates his guys versus the committee guys. And there starts to be a breakdown, because then the committee's like, well, we got you these talented players, but you're not using them properly. And the manager is like, well, I didn't want these guys in the first place. I wanted this guy. That like those kinds of things can really break down relationships within a staff. So my fear here would be that you have Lincoln Riley's guys or ex-coaches guys,
right,
and you have guys that were recruited and brought in by recruiting staff that are now going to be coached by coaches who didn't want them there in the first place. This is a worst case scenario, what I'm talking about. Like, I don't think that this is destined for this kind of thing.
No.
But again, this is a tightrope that every organization walks. When you have the right philosophy like Chad Bowden has, everybody else needs to be on board with your philosophy. And it can be hard to get everybody on board with your philosophy when you are basically Brady Bunching a staff right now.
I think that's a good point too, the Brady Bunch aspect of, I think it would be a little bit smoother if, and maybe we're being a little too, paranoid, negative, whatever you want to call it, about talking about these potential pitfalls. But I think it would be smoother if they were all brought in together and the team was all assembled at one point. Mind you, Bowden's team is put together all this season. And a lot of those guys know each other from Notre Dame or from working at Cincinnati before then. Like, all those, they all know each other, right? But the Lincoln Riley side of things is new to this part. And everything you described it's literally Chelsea FC, by the way.
Yeah.
It's literally the downfall of Chelsea. And so, like, yeah, I think that it's interesting. How is it going to be when there's disagreements, and how do you talk that out? I don't know. I think we're gonna find out going forward. It's going to be interesting to see how things go when there is a recruit that sort of fits that situation. I don't know that we'd ever get transparency to actually know, but it would be fascinating. So
yeah, and these things are all. It is going to be really fascinating to see this kind of stuff come together, and I think there will be, maybe not from us, but the recruitniks and the people who have like direct sources to the staff. I think they'll get nuggets about this was a so-and-so hire. This was a so-and-so kid. I think that's always possible.
In the pros though, right? Like,
yeah.
And like, not just, I mean, it's very transparent that this stuff happens in the Premier League in soccer, but like this happens in the NFL where, the GM will pick up somebody because he thinks that they could fit for whatever reason. And then maybe that guy just doesn't get run because the coach doesn't have sort of the same opinion.
Or in the NFL draft, you have the scout who goes to bat for the guy who comes in and is a complete bust. And then it's like, well, remember the last time you fought really hard for somebody, they sucked. Like those kinds of politics get in that. But I'm with you. I don't want this to be seen as though we're like, crapping all over Chad Bowden. Like I said, I'm actually very excited about this. I think the structure looks right to me. The philosophy looks right to me.
If it's going to work, this is the perfect structure that could work.
Yeah, what he's saying, it looks right. Like everything looks right to me.
Yeah.
I think the way that we're looking at it is more, I think it would be easier for us to come on the show and just spend an hour and a half talking about how this is great. Oh my God, isn't this great? Which I think there's room for, certainly. But I think it's more interesting to discuss, okay, we all agree that this is the correct approach. So what factors stop this from having USC be an instant success? Like where could this go wrong? And like, what will that mean for USC and its future? And I think, again, we go back to, I can see where this could go wrong, and everything that I see that kind of thing happening to me leads to a situation where either this works and everybody's happy and USC goes on and wins a ton of crap and we're all really, really, on cloud nine, or this doesn't work and we end up in a situation where the Jen Cohen, Chad Bowden structure survives longer than the Lincoln Riley structure. And
well, the interesting thing is, if that's the case, well, then is the structure the true success? Like,
I mean, that's always the question, right?
Yeah.
So,
but ultimately, you'll be judged by whatever happens on the field, the wins and losses, because, like we've talked about before, SC has made great hires and bad hires, and they've had great hires fail, and they've had bad hires succeed. Those things can happen a bunch of different ways.
Just look at who was the offensive line coach who I absolutely loved, not the one I hated.
Clay McGuire.
Clay McGuire,
not a guy that we thought would. I don't think we had high hopes.
We looked at Clay McGuire's resume and we're like, meh, okay, I guess we'll see how this goes.
And when it finished, we're like, why didn't Graham Harrell bring him in when he first got here?
Yeah, like he was absolutely awesome. But then USC has brought in other coaches that we clocked from day one were not going to work for the offensive line, and others that we thought were going to be awesome and just couldn't cut it. So I think there's a lot of wait and see going on here. But as far as off-season developments go, I think that you can't really complain about anything that's going on here, because the pitfalls of this structure predate this structure, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think it all comes down to, and I know that this is an annoying reduction of everything. You are successful because of people. And you will fail because of people. Human error will be the reason that you fail, and human success will be the reason that you're successful. You know what I mean? And West Texas Mike said we'd have to wait for the Steve Bischoff book to find out if where the inner conflicts would come from and whatnot. Lisa, it took me a minute here, but you're talking about previous offensive line coaches and our opinions on them.
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this? Nah.
There you go. Walter in the chat says, you guys need to stop overanalyzing everything. Do you think Lincoln Riley doesn't want to win and bring USC back to its... He absolutely does.
I think everybody at USC wants to win. I don't think that's the question.
If he didn't want to win, I don't think Lincoln Riley would put in the effort that he has in the last 15 months to make a ton of correct. I say correct in the sense of like well thought out, logical hires, and doing like if he didn't want to win, he would have stuck with Alex Grinch. He would have not, made changes in different, coaching staff decisions that he made. He would have maybe he looks to leave and go somewhere else. Like
he wouldn't have benched, Miller Moss or any of these things. No, I think he absolutely wants to win, and I want to make it clear. Bowden in his comments talked almost exclusively referencing Riley and Cohen. He had a lot of really good things to say about Riley as a recruiter and as somebody who is an evaluator and everything like that. So I don't think that I don't think we need to assume that they're going to have a bad relationship. Where I'm coming from is that I think Lincoln Riley wanted to win last year, and still USC went 6-6 during the regular season. I think that he. Clay Helton wanted to win too. I don't think you can tell me he didn't want to win. Wanting to win does not equal actually winning. Every coach that goes out there, every player that goes out there wants to win. I want $1 million. I
was literally going to say
Am I capable or motivated enough to go out and be a millionaire? No, this is funny. You and I watch
feet pics.
You and I watch Love is Blind, and every season on Love is Blind, there's somebody who's like, I want to be a millionaire or whatever, and I just look at them because they're like, I love that for you. That's not my future. It will simply just not be my future.
Well, also $1 million is not a lot of money.
Well, certainly more than we have.
Certainly more than we have. Yes.
Yeah.
But like.
But the point being is that you can say you want things and actually being able to execute them. You got to realize only one team gets to win at the end of the year.
Right.
From certainly in the pool that USC is fishing in, only one team gets to like come home with a fish. So everybody else is trying to find, there are a million reasons why Ohio State wins a national title over Notre Dame or Penn State or any of those teams. Those are all like well-run programs with more stable rosters and stable structures than USC has had in a long time. And still they can't win. So like, I don't think it's Ohio
State fans wanted
Ryan Day fired
up until the second that
the final whistle blew and they won that game. Yeah. So like, I think that's the lens through which we view this kind of thing is, you have to be able to navigate a lot of difficult relationships, situations, all of this kind of stuff in order to get to the top of the mountain. And my question for Lincoln Riley remains, does he have the is he capable of navigating those situations the way that he would need to in order to put USC at the top? I know for a fact he's capable of navigating situations to a playoff berth because he was able to do that in Oklahoma. The question that Oklahoma had about him, the question that USC continues to have about him is how much further can he go? I think this structure that Bowden puts together, if they can work together, then right now the structure looks like it will be a really solid foundation upon which Lincoln Riley can, tap back into his success. So if USC does not succeed, considering that we agree that this structure is at least sounds positive, then you have to look sort of deeper for why this kind of thing doesn't succeed. And I think it's fair to talk about what happens if USC doesn't succeed when we are in year 12 of this podcast, and we've probably only had like one season where we felt good coming out of the end of it, and that was 2016 when everybody still wanted Clay Helton fired. So I don't know.
West Texas Mike earlier on said, I thought Riley came to put a goddamn fence around California. Why is he learning this 3 years later? And less about the California thing, but like I think that sentiment works for sort of everything, right? Like Lincoln Riley wants to do things. He wants to win. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants USC to win. He was the right hire. He was the biggest hire that SC has made in a literal century. The most ambitious hire that they had made in a century. But that doesn't mean that you win just because of wanting to win or making the correct ambitious hire. You still have to put in all the work and do all the things. And SC is trying to find new ways to do all the things right and continue to do them because 3 years in, SC's record has gone back. And ultimately, it's a numbers game and you will be judged by whatever the wins and losses are. But you make those wins and losses more likely to go in your favor when you do all the other things right, like recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. When Lincoln Riley was hired, if you had asked us in his first 3 years, will Lincoln Riley go to the playoff? We would have said yes.
Hey, to be fair, if the 12-team playoff existed today,
that's true. He would have got yes.
He would have got in.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, no. The point is, I think that some healthy skepticism here is fair. Some positivity and hope is fair. Mm-hmm. It's the off season, so we will see.
Yeah, SC is undefeated in every off season, every single one. Usually have good off seasons, I think. Is SC better in the off season than in season?
Oh, absolutely. Wow. Yes. There have been a couple, I want to say there were a couple off seasons where it was like an arrest and a, injury and a thing, like that kind of stuff.
I don't want to tempt fate.
No, but it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. It's been a while. Did
USC check a lot of those boxes when, multiple football players got popped in a COVID PPE scam or whatever it was? FBI investigation.
I feel like that got sort of overlooked.
It did. That was a weird situation.
Yeah, because you can say that might have been more serious than, robbing a Panda Express.
Yeah, although robbing a Panda Express is pretty.
Speaking of, which chicken sounds good?
It does.
All right. Anyways, we're gonna go celebrate our Cinco de Marzo. We hope you guys continue to do that and have a great weekend. Follow it along with that too. It's happy Jet Lag Day. New season of Jet Lag is out. We're super pumped. We're gonna watch that later today.
We've got a whole thing tonight. We've got Jet Lag.
Traders is tomorrow.
Traders is on Thursday.
I misspoke.
So we've got Jet Lag and Survivor tonight.
Yeah. Traders tomorrow. Love is Blind Sunday. Yeah. We're weirdos.
Good weekend.
Yeah. We're weirdos. All right. Chelsea tomorrow too. So, all right.
Oh, cool. Liverpool won today. In case anybody cares, which you don't, but I'm still going to talk about it. I'm trying to figure out what the equivalent USC performance for what Liverpool did today against PSG in the Champions League would be. So let me describe it and see, and you tell me, or anyone in the chat tell me if you can think of an equivalent USC performance.
Okay.
Because I want to say there has been one recently, but I can't remember which one it was. I want to say there was a game this past season, in fact, that felt this way, but USC might have lost it, so I don't remember. Maybe it was a UCLA game. Liverpool play for 85 minutes, completely outplayed the entire way. PSG should be up by 4 at halftime. It's 0-0. They get a goal disallowed because it's offside. There's a penalty shout that isn't given. USC is just, Liverpool is just absolutely overwhelmed. They're just defending for their lives for 85 minutes, scraping to not give up a goal. And then out of nowhere, randomly, the goalkeeper kicks the ball out, deep down the field, like a deep bomb down the sideline to Darwin Nunez, the absolute chaos merchant, who somehow manages to head the ball down, take control of it, and then number one, stays onside, which is something he cannot do ever. Heads the ball down, gets control of it, and then instead of shooting 35 yards over the top of the crossbar, decides to do the sensible and intelligent thing and play a simple little layoff pass to his teammate Harvey Elliott, who's running up the right, who then kicks the ball past the keeper to score. Liverpool smash and grab, highway robbery, theft of the highest order to come out of this game, 1-0. Give me a USC equivalent.
Is it not 2022 Oregon State?
I mean, no, that's a great one because USC played terribly, and then Caleb Williams hits that one ball over the top.
The Nealon nudge?
Yes, the Nealon nudge saves USC, and then
Oregon State threw a bunch of interceptions because like they had chances but threw interceptions.
Liverpool's goalkeeper had they were calling it on the post-game show like one of the greatest goalkeeping performances of all time. Full stop.
He went full Tim Howard against Belgium.
He went full Tim Howard against Belgium. Yeah. And so that was like the Nealon nudge, miraculous, like keeping USC in the game. And then
of course we lost that game against Belgium, but
I mean that's true. And then Caleb Williams, who hadn't thrown an accurate pass for pretty much the entire 58 minutes of that game, decides to go out and throw a beautiful touchdown to who was that to? Was it
Addison? Yeah,
Jordan Addison.
Mm-hmm.
And
also, can you stop touching your mic?
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you.
And that was the equivalent of Liverpool's front line couldn't string together two passes throughout the entire game, and then suddenly, the 18-year-old and the chaos merchant who drives us all crazy.
Is Caleb a chaos merchant?
Caleb's a chaos merchant. Yeah, Caleb's got a little bit of Darwin Nunez in him. I will say that. Very, very talented.
Big arm, big leg.
Big arm, big leg.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody can look them in the eye more often and say, do less. So,
yeah. All right. We will catch you guys later. Don't really have mailbag stuff, but hey, that's more reason for you guys to send us an email, randomtroy@fanside.com, or call us 818-643-7227.
It's like
yeah, or leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts. We got a new review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh.
But I don't think it was like a written review. I think it was just stars.
Star?
Yeah. Can I tell you really quick before we go, the most self-serving, like, narcissist thing that I do probably? I check to see if there's new podcast reviews like 3 times a week. And it's like 367. We're at 367 for months. It goes to 368 and I'm like, oh, this is cool. But for some reason, it always takes like a day or two for the review to actually pop up. So it said 368 the other day and I'm like, oh, sweet, we're going to have a new review. And every time I've checked it, there's still no written review, which is cool. Like, it's fine.
Hey,
the stars is the most important part. But like, I get so excited. Oh, we're going to read a new review. We're going to read if somebody loves us or hates us, and this is exciting.
We have not gotten a review in 2025 yet. So if you have not left a review for us on Apple Podcasts, now would be a good time to do it.
I think this means nobody's listening.
I mean, it's the off season. They might not be listening.
Yeah.
You know.
All right. We love you guys. We will be back next week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. West Texas, Mike, Rama Murdy, Greg, Walter, Zachary, Kenny.
I think Cameron
Sauger was in there.
Yeah, Sauger was in there.
Cam Bauer, everyone's favorite Seinfeld guy. Tim in LA was in there. Yeah, so many guys and gals and everybody in the chat. We appreciate you, and we'll be back next week. Until then, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.